I have been stuck in long classes and online lectures for years now, but not once was I taught how to actually learn during them. And after 2 years of IBDP, 1 year of biomedical sciences, and 3 years of medical school, trust me, I've tried everything underneath the sun. But only one method truly helped me learn. And not just learn for that one class, but learn for the next 10 to 20 classes. All of it in just 1 or 2 sittings. In a way that cut my revision time down to 10% of what it used to be and improved my grades from 60% to above 95%. I'm going to explain how you can study for your classes in the exact same way. Every step that you need to take before, during, and after your classes. And because I know doing a full-blown method for every single class you have is a bit of an overkill, I will also be giving you a lazy version for this method that I do myself when I'm behind or I can't make enough time. But before I tell you what you need to start with, you need to change the way you think about learning topics in class. What I need you to do is forget about learning things topic by topic, lesson by lesson, one by one with the teacher. Because honestly, that is the fastest way to get bored and not want to study and not be bothered to study till the exams. If you have 12 chapters of biology, do you really think that the quickest way to learn them is go like, yes, September I'll do cell biology, October I'll do molecular, November I'll do genetics, one by one? No, obviously not. That's so slow and disjointed. All 3 of them are so heavily related to each other that by the time you get to genetics, you'll have forgotten the other 2 for sure. So what's the point? Instead, what you do is separate yourself from the tortoise pace everyone else is learning at and understand the fact that you can you're 100% capable of doing 3, 4, 6 weeks of that subject in one sitting on a weekend. That is the realization that you need to ingrain in your head. And the summary of the way you do this before the class is you study 3 or 4 of the related chapters or lectures or topics together, and then use the school classes and your future learning sessions to remember the topic in a deeper way. That is it. And by the way, learning the basic content for 3 or 4 of those big topics that are related to each other can be done in an hour or 2 on one weekend, and then you're sorted for the rest of your classes. It is what I do, and the reason I do it is because studying 4 diseases together allows me to build a base for all of them and link them together in the same session. I understand them together. I find relations between them. I see what's different, what's same, or is the treatment of this one similar to this one, so that when I'm learning new information on one topic in class, I can not just make links between that new information and that one topic I learned before, but I can make that link between that new topic and that new information with all of the topics that I built the base from. They're all linked together. Oh, this process in topic 1 that I'm looking at in class is quite similar to the process and the underlying pathology of the disease that we learn in topic 2. Or the treatment of topic 1 actually is the opposite of topic 4. Thinking like this. Thinking about how the thing that you're learning is similar or different and finding relations between everything and linking it back to your prior knowledge is the way to learn most effectively. And so now that I've clarified that, this is step 1. Scope all the topics and group the related ones. This involves me going through my entire syllabus and listing out every single disease and subtopic that I'm covering that entire semester for every case on a notes page. So for you, I know this is like a big planning step, but do it for every subtopic that you're doing for each big chapter that you have to cover in that semester. If not, then do it at least for the next few chapters that you're going to be doing in class. And once I've done that, I figure out which of these diseases are related to each other. Which of them can I put in groups so that I can eventually study them together at a later stage. For example, all the lung conditions in all of my chapters, I grouped them together and studied them together. Same with the upper GI and esophagus ones. They might be split across multiple chapters, but because you related them, they're worth doing together. And yes, it is easy to group topics in medicine because you can kind of group it by organ and stuff, but you are studying a subject. Whatever you're doing, all the topics in that subject are related together in some way or the other, so I'm sure you can find relations. Now pick one of these groups with 3 or 4 related topics or chapters or whatever, and now is the time where we learn them together, where we build the basics for them together and then make a mind map for them. Building this mind map is very important because this will be something that links everything together and organizes it in a memorable way for us. That's basically everything we're doing before the classes, but let me explain how exactly you do this in the next few steps. Step 2, skim each topic for 15 minutes and write the keywords. Open up the lecture, open up the textbook, whatever you have, and number 1, skim through all of the slides, all of the pages to get a general overview. Look at the bolded statements, the headings, the subheadings, the diagrams, but ignore all the specific details. You don't want to get stuck in them. Only focus on the basics of the topic for this 15 minutes of skimming. For me, I watch and skip through a lot of YouTube videos to get a general idea of how the topic is laid out while I do the skimming. It's just faster. But while I skim, I also have a second goal, which is to figure out exactly what I'm going to be putting up on my mind map. How am I going to make sense of this whole thing and link all these topics together? To do this, while I understand the basics when I'm skimming, I write down all the keywords that are important, that seem important or to the structure of the chapter, and then categorize them into headings, subheadings, important points, just to give me an idea of how I might lay all of these different categories and groups out on my mind map. How am I going to organize this topic and put it on the mind map in a way that is memorable? And that's it for this step. You just do this for all 3 to 4 of the topics, 15 minutes each. Each topic should have 10 to 15 keywords that are categorized into the headings and subheadings. It's basically like making notes for the mind map before you're actually going to make it. It is preparing for the mind map, kind of. At this point, you should generally know what's involved in all of these topics because you've basically spend an hour doing it. And once you do this, just pause for a second. Understand what you've just done here. You've just skimmed through 3 to 4 big topics, understood what they're about, what their basics are, what their main concepts and are involved in. You've compared multiple of these big topics together in your head too. You've seen how they're different, how they're similar. You've built a big picture for the topic, all of it in the first hour of you studying, something that you wouldn't have reached until 2 months of you doing it in class. And now we're going to continue this in step 3, where we're solidifying and linking all of the basics together through a mind map. Creating mind maps isn't something I really did until about a year ago, but since I've been making them, that's been the biggest boost in how much I can remember, like months after studying. I've made videos where I'm making these mind maps live on a topic and explaining exactly how I'm doing it to you as well. So make sure to watch them for more detail if you don't know how to make mind maps. But I'll lay some basic steps down here as well. Start by, again, trying to visualize how you're going to lay out all of these topics on that page. And this is important because the way you lay this out on that mind map is most likely the way you're going to be thinking about every single concept and how it's linked in that topic. So take time to think about it. You can't just throw the title in the middle and start like throwing arrows off it. This is what I do. Number 1, think about one key central idea that will link all 3 to 4 topics. How can we link them together in a smart way? Is it location? Are they in the same place or in different places, involved in the same system, affecting the system in different ways? Is it structure? Are they part of the same process? Are they different parts in a timeline? My point is, ask yourself what is different and what is similar between all of these main concepts between the topics. And eventually, once you put time into it, once you practice the skill more and more, ask ChatGPT if you wanted to help you out to find relations between these things. Eventually, we'll arrive at an answer. Number 2, once you've thought of this structure and generally have an idea of how you're going to lay it out, think about how you're going to visualize these concepts on paper, because they can't just be words. Also think again about how you're going to group these different concepts together. What is going to be on the mind map? The previous step will help here. Make sure you use very visual diagrams. Make sure you use arrows, thicker for more importance, thinner for less important. Use as little text as possible and avoid all the details. You won't remember them anyways. This is for the basics. And then just start making them. Again, I've made several of these live before that I highly recommend you watch. But remember, the reason we are making these is because it will represent how we will think about all 4 of these topics. When we learn something new, we will think back to this mind map and think about how that new information relates to this initial structure. This skimming and then mind mapping for around 30 minutes is all you need to do for multiple topics, so weeks of classes. Yes, before each class in the future, you will do a little bit of skimming just to remind yourself, of course. And yes, at the start of making these mind maps, it will take time. It might take an hour because you don't understand how you're going to be doing it, how you're going to actually be fitting everything on paper. But I'm at a place now where making this mind map is actually very easy. All it does, it takes like 10-15 minutes, and then I've covered all 3 huge topics that I'm going to be doing for the next few weeks. It's insane how efficient your study process gets after you get good at it. But before we move on to the next section, which is what you do during the classes, if you are a student who is spending ages writing essays, literature reviews, and researching for your dissertations, then let me introduce to you the kind sponsor of today's video, Consensus AI. If ChatGPT and Google Scholar got married, their child would be Consensus. But the difference between this AI and any other is that once you type in a question, it will give you over 200 million of the most important and niche scientific papers on specifically relevant to the topic. It's used by students, researchers at prestigious universities, and doctors around the world. Even I used it for my research paper last year, and only because I used it is my paper on the road to being published now. Purely because I got so many great patterns and insights from it. I would do one search and then get summaries for all of the relevant studies. It gave me their conclusions quickly. It gave me all of the data and the graphs and the tables used. I wouldn't have to spend hours just searching through each and every study, which saved me so many hours of just digging through papers and scrolling through to see what's worth it. ChatGPT gives you fully machine-generated answers, whereas Consensus AI connects you to the best scientific papers out there related to what you just want to know. So definitely go check it out. Please use the link in my description and use the code ZAIN40, ZAIN 40 to get 40% off of the premium subscription for 2 years. Link in the description. And again, thank you Consensus AI for kindly sponsoring this video. Now for section 2, what you do during the class to learn. After creating such a good base for multiple topics, when you go into class about the first topic, you're not just gonna be like, oh, what's that? Confused, I don't know what's happening, I can't be... No, you already have a little bit of an understanding. Your base is rock solid, so you'll actually want to study and you'll actually understand what the teacher is saying from the get-go. Trust me, when you look at the information, you'll immediately, like automatically, without even trying, start to make sense of things. And it's a small thing, but that is the best place to be at this stage. Now let's go through what I do in the classes that I'm actually awake in. Now even though I've already skimmed before the class, or I don't know how long I did it, so I give the lecture a quick run through for around 2 minutes just to remind myself of the structure. If you don't have time or you don't have a laptop, for whatever reason you forget to actually just look through the slides in the beginning, forget it, you've done the skimming already. The main thing I utilize my class time for is processing the information and creating my recall questions. Let me explain how I do it through the next 3 steps, which aren't, by the way, one after the other. I do all 3 of them together throughout the class. Step 4, convert all information into recall questions. The reason I convert all the information I'm learning into questions is because, as we know, testing yourself is a key pillar of learning. So instead of wasting time copying from the board, making notes, which have zero utility by the way, I create questions because I can then use these questions to test myself on the knowledge in my revision later. The reason is as simple as that. Creating questions also has other benefits. For example, in class, I'm actually thinking through the information more deeply. I'm not just mindly copying down, and I'm thinking about it deeply in a way, and then thinking specifically, how is this information going to be tested to my specific exam, and creating questions from that mindset. So every slide, every few minutes of the teacher speaking, I'm consciously thinking, okay, what is important here? What sort of information can be tested on in the exams? What questions can come from this topic? And once you get used to that way of thinking, the process becomes very simple. My tips on making good questions are: number 1, make them very specific for MCQs or short answer questions. Number 2, use words like define, explain, describe, analyze, name 5 of these or whatever. Avoid using how, what, why. Number 3, have a total of 15 to 20 questions per class or per subtopic that you're studying. And number 4, keep improving the questions as you revise. The first batch of questions are usually too many, and they're far too basic. I always end up rewording them or reducing them or making them better after every revision session, after every testing session post the classes. Again, for more information on how to make good questions, go watch my full guide on studying. There's definitely a section in there for that. Step 5, learn by layering. In terms of how to learn and absorb information during the class, my suggestion is to honestly ignore half of it. And half of it is being very generous. Because 20-25% of the information is usually just specific details that the teacher dives way too deeply into, that your mind is not ready for, that you will not understand anyways. And the rest of the things aren't specifically going to be coming up on your exam. So my policy is to ignore the majority of the information that's being taught. Because we learn best by layering. The basics first, then building on them with the general concepts and information and processes, and then the complex details. And if you haven't noticed already, that has been our entire strategy so far. The first 3 steps before the class was us covering that basic layer and getting a bit of that general concepts. Now that we're in class, we're doing the general concepts, we're adding a bit more details, we're layering slowly above the information that we already know. But my point is, the information will only stick in your head if there is pre-existing stuff to help you support it. I will never be able to understand and perfectly memorize all the specific doses, the treatments, the specific investigations involved, all the microorganisms involved after just learning what a disease is. But if I give myself time to understand the easier information, what is the disease? How does it work? What are the processes involved? What can you do to fix it? Maybe then I can figure out the treatments and the doses and all the specifics. And that step-by-step logic applies to every subject. So in class, when trying to understand information, literally think of it in layers. If you come across something that's tough, that's too complicated, that you're like, I don't know, I'm confused now, Just remember, that is the complex detail layer. I don't need to think about it right now. Make a question if it's important and put it to the side. Come back to it later when your understanding is more solidified and when your brain is more ready to take the information in. Step 6, linking with the initial mind map. The final thing that I want you to be doing throughout the class, and I mentioned this before, is when you come across new pieces of information, think about how you can link it to your initial mind map. That entire structure through which you understand multiple of these topics. How does this one thing that the professor is explaining make sense in terms of that initial mind map? All you're really thinking about is how this new piece of information is going to fit in your head. And you don't need to keep drawing on the mind map and keep adding to it. Just doing it in your head is enough of an active process. Because that is how we learn, by linking new things to pre-existing knowledge. You can't just read and then just go like, yeah, no, nice, cool. It has to be an active process. And if you link the new information you're learning in class for this topic to your mind map, you'll automatically compare this new information to the other topics that we did as well. You're not just learning, oh, how does this new information, this new detail link to topic 1? You're thinking, this new information links to topic 1, but oh, it's quite similar to topic 2 or topic 3. That thinking process, that relational thinking, as people call it, that is the most important part of learning. Section 3, what we do after the class. Now after the class, if you've done all the steps, the revision is the same as I usually suggest. At this stage, you not only have a strong base for one topic, you have a strong base for multiple one of those. So now you can actually revise them all together if you want. You can start to create questions on the other ones as well. You can start to learn them, or you can just start to focus on this one and go deeper into this and then tackle those later, however you think you learn best. But this is how your revision session should go. Step 7, recall the questions and learn again and again. Start your session with recalling the questions that you created during the class. Take your time and really work hard to remember what the answer could be. Take 10, 20, 30 seconds, even if you don't know the answer. Think about what you know about the topic. Think about what you were taught in class, and something or the other, if you put effort of these few seconds into the question, into answering the question, something will usually click. Once you've given your full try to recall the answer, then you go and check that answer using the textbook or the lecture or Google. You go see if you got it right or wrong and to what degree you got it right or wrong, and you take the time to look through it. If you got it right, still read through the answer and all of the context that is surrounding it. That is the benefit of going back to the source and actually looking through the answer. You get the context, the diagrams around it, everything that's related to that specific answer. And then when you get something wrong, think about how now you're going to go away and relearn that. Because you getting it wrong is a sign that you didn't link it in with your mind map properly enough, and that the connection wasn't strong enough for you to recall it. And that happens a lot. You get a lot of questions wrong, especially in that first revision session, and you have to relearn a lot of the knowledge because at the end, when you actually are learning and you link something in, you do think that, oh, I've done it well, oh, it's all good. But then when you actually answer the question a week later or 4 days later and you don't remember, that means that you didn't link it well. And that means that you have to figure out a new way to think about the topic. And that might mean that your mind map wasn't as effective and that you might need to restructure it, and that is all part of learning. So don't get worried if that happens to you as well. You still have to keep reintegrating what you're learning back in your head. I've only really tackled how to study a topic before, during, and after class. I haven't really talked about how you're going to continue on that revision process through spaced repetition and all of that sort of stuff. So check out my full study guide again for more details on how you can continue revising that topic from now. And now for the lazy version of this whole method. This is for the times that you can't be bothered, or you're behind, or you have too much work. Whatever the excuse is for not doing the steps before your class. Because if you haven't done them, you can still be smart with how you're learning during the class and after the class. This is what I do personally. It's not perfect, but it works. Okay, this is what you do during class. Step 1, take 10 minutes at the start of the class to skim through all the lecture slides or quickly skim through the chapter in your textbook. Again, bolded words, headings, key phrases, understand the structure of the slides, of the chapter, whatever. Even if that means you won't be listening to every word that the professor is saying initially, you'll gain the big picture right at the start, and that will pay off way more than you focusing intently for the first 10 minutes. Then just start to concentrate and think about the information that the professor is saying and relate it to what you already know about that topic or the initial skimming that you just did. Keep in mind that gaining the structure and understanding the basics and how the concepts work is still the most important step here. And step number 3, throughout that class, convert all the information that's being taught into questions so that you can use them to test yourself on them later. What you should now do is the stuff that you were supposed to do before the class, i.e. writing and categorizing the keywords and then mind mapping. Step 4, figure out which other 3 or 4 big topics you can group with this one that you learned in class. I will always refuse to waste my time and just use that session for one topic that was taught in class, unless it was really big and complicated. So go ahead and link multiple ones together because that helps you create a much stronger base. And because it speeds up the rest of your revision by a large amount. So group the topics and then study them together. Step 5, at this point I try and remember what was taught in class, try and remember the way it was structured, the topic, what were the main headings, what were the subheadings, what were the main points, how was it divided up. If I can't do that, then I will just go through the topic again, skim through it, write down the keywords, categorize them. This is again the preparation that you need to do for building that mind map. And then step 6, finally create that mind map. Use all the tips that I previously mentioned. This is a step that needs to happen. It might take half an hour, but it will save you hours of revision for that specific topic and many others. And that's it for the lazy version. I'm giving myself the false illusion that it is lazy when it's not really. You still have to do the minimum steps of the mind mapping and the creating the questions, but it just takes the pressure of doing the stuff before the class as well. And also you leave the proper testing and recalling and stuff for later revision sessions. But this video includes everything that I would suggest you do before, during, and after your classes. This is how you study multiple huge topics in an efficient way. You avoid going at the classes one by one topic, slow pace, and accelerate the way you absorb information by hitting multiple topics, understanding their basics together. And most of my students, everyone that I speak to, has so many of these limitations that they're only limited to just learning one topic in one session, doing it one topic at a time. But we're all so much more capable than that. We learn by linking things together. Honestly, if there's something that you need to take away from this video, it is that. Link multiple topics that are related to each other and study them together. I've literally been making my videos and all of my video ideas from the comments that you guys are putting down below. So keep commenting your struggles, the issues you have with your specific methods, anything, and I will be more than willing to help. I'll link the guides I mentioned here and I'll link it in the description as well. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like, spam the comments, do the usual stuff, and I will see you in the next one.